Today I'm going to teach you guys about Billy the Kid, one of the most famous outlaws of all time. His story took place here in New Mexico, and I'm going to break it down for you. So Billy the Kid's name is William H. Bonney, although some people say that his original name was Henry McCarty. Anyway, so Billy the Kid was born November 23rd, 1859 in New York, New York, and he came from Irish immigrants. So he migrated from New York to Kansas with his parents, and while they were in Kansas, that's where his father died. So then his mother took him and his sibling and they moved to Colorado. While living in Colorado, his mom remarried and then they moved to New Mexico. So when Billy the Kid was 14, his mom died of tuberculosis in 1874. When she died, he became an orphan. So he had to live in foster homes and boarding houses. Fun fact, Billy the Kid learned Spanish living in New Mexico and spoke it fluently. So living as an orphan on the streets, so to speak, going from foster home to foster home or boarding house to boarding house, I know how that is because that's how I lived. Well, eventually he fell into the wrong crowd, a tough crowd, and then he fell into the life of crime. Billy the Kid never robbed no trains or banks, but he did rob a lot of people. In 1875, Billy the Kid got arrested for the first time for stealing from a Chinese laundromat with a dude named Sombrero Jack. I guess Billy the Kid got back with his loot to the boarding house he was staying at, and he stashed it somewhere, but the landlord of the boarding house turned him into the sheriff. Even though this was just a misdemeanor and he probably would have just got let out, he escaped through a chimney. He escaped by climbing up a chimney. Then he fled town and became an outlaw. In 1877, Billy the Kid killed his first man in a saloon in Arizona. He got into a fight with somebody, an argument, smoked him, and that's when he got his nickname Billy the Kid. Some just called him the Kid. In 1878, Billy the Kid was involved in the Lincoln County War, which is what he's most famous for. So in the Lincoln County War, you had two sides, we'll just say. On one side, you had John Tunstall, who was a British-born man, and on the other side, you had James Dolan and Lawrence Murphy, who were Irish tycoons. So Dolan and Murphy had an outfit that they called the House, and the House had long held a monopoly over the dry goods and the cattle in Lincoln County. So John Tunstall was starting to try to do his own business there, and they didn't like it. So they approached him to try to intimidate him and move him off their land. So Tunstall enlisted Billy the Kid and several other gunmen to protect his property. So the sheriff of Lincoln County was a man named William Brady, and he was a dirty sheriff and he supported the House. While he organized a posse and they got together and they killed John Tunstall. They killed John Tunstall in February 1878. And this set off a spark that exploded into the Lincoln County War. Billy the Kid and a group of Tunstall's former employees, a group who were loyal to him, who loved him, for whatever reason, they just felt loyalty to him. They felt like they had to avenge him. So they got together and they gathered together and they formed a group, an organization, and they named it the Regulators. And the Regulators were made to regulate against Sheriff Brady and the ones who killed John Tunstall, which they did. They assassinated Sheriff Brady, then they spent the next several months at war with the House, and this was the Lincoln County War. Then in July of 1878, there was a 5-day gun battle, a firefight that lasted 5 days in the town of Lincoln, New Mexico. At the end of these 5 days, both sides agreed to a peace treaty. The Regulators were disbanded and they all went their separate ways. So Billy the Kid escaped from the Lincoln County War, but he remained wanted for the killing of Sheriff Brady. On December 1880, Billy the Kid was captured by Pat Garrett. He stood trial for murder down there in Mesilla, New Mexico in April 1881, where he was found guilty, convicted, and sentenced to hang. But on April 28th, before they could hang him, he escaped, killing 2 deputies. That was April 28th, 1881. But then on July 14th, 1881, he was killed. So he was kicking it on the Pete Maxwell Ranch when Pat Garrett caught him, shot him, and killed him. Fun fact, when Billy the Kid was on the run between the years 1877 to 1881, in that 4-year time frame, he was known to kill at least 9 people. Anyway, I just wanted to tell you guys the story about Billy the Kid. I hope you learned something. This is Tragedy. I'm out.